my dear children, I hope you're all doing absolutely great. Introducing myself again, I'm Ambika, Master Teacher of Biology right here at Vedantu, and I welcome you all to yet another interesting session of our ICSE series, our newly launched ICSE series. And today I intend to take you through some tips, tricks and strategies on how to score 100% in ICSE Biology. Again here, I think this session will be useful for all your biology students, whatever board you study in, but I will be going by a little preference for our ICSE children, considering the question pattern and giving examples of questions and all those things, right? So stay tuned, stay with me until the very end. As always, it's very important to study any subject starting by knowing your syllabus, right? The ICSE syllabus as such is vast, and in biology alone you have around 15 chapters. I have listed them here, and you need to have different strategies to study to tackle each of these chapters, to tackle each of the concepts in each of these chapters, right? For instance, cell cycle and cell division is a chapter in which you really need to visualize how does interphase happen, and how does mitosis happen, how does meiosis happen. You need to have that sequence very clear in your mind. And of course, the human physiology chapters, beyond doubt, right? We all need to visualize how the processes happen, and only then it is going to be very clear in our heads, right? And adding to all this, we do have a lot of terminology which we will have to memorize, right? No other shortcuts to that. Okay, and coming to chapters like genetics, the concepts in the chapter genetics, I think that is a chapter which most of us would enjoy studying. At least for me as a student and as a teacher, I have always enjoyed that subject, because you really don't need to memorize too many things. Of course, you need to know the basic terminology. You need to know terms like alleles, genes, homozygous, heterozygous, and all of those things. But once you have a basic understanding of those, and once you understand how Mendelian laws work and function and how everything works in genetics, I think you can just answer every question using your logic, right? It's actually an amazing chapter, a fun chapter, I would say, and the most interesting chapter, in my opinion, of your syllabus in biology. Now, as you know, you have a written paper which you write for a maximum of 80 marks, and you have 2 hours of duration. Your remaining 20 marks will be for internal assessment, your practicals and stuff. Your school teachers will be taking care of those. Let us here focus on how to score 100% or 80 on 80 in your written paper, right? And as you perhaps already know, your paper will have 2 sections, section 1 and section 2. Section 1, which will be a compulsory section of 40 marks, and you will have only short answer questions, right? And section 2 will comprise of 6 questions in all, out of which you have a choice of answering any 4, right? You can pick any 4 out of the 6, and each question carries 10 marks. So again, 40 marks in all. Right? So short answer questions in section 1 would mostly comprise of definitions, give reasons, probably differentiate between 2 different processes or 2 different things, and simple questions like that. And section 2 on the contrary, would have 10 marks each, but that doesn't mean you have to write essays. You will be fortunate enough here, because in your 10 marks questions, generally how it is asked is, the main question is divided into smaller sub questions, and you would know exactly what to write for each of those, right? Let's just look at an example for a question from section 2 now. Okay, let's not aim at answering this right now. This is only to give an idea about how section 2 questions are typically asked. Okay, so here this is a 10 marks question that can come in your section 2, which is divided into 2 parts of 5 marks each, and the first 5 marks part itself has 2 sub parts to it. Right? It says write an experiment to demonstrate osmosis and define osmosis. Both together will fetch you 5 marks if answered correctly. right? And the second sub part of the 10 marks question again has 3 different parts to it, right? Find out the progeny of a marriage between a hemophilic man and a hemophilic carrier woman. The second one is define homozygous condition, and the third one is the sex of a child depends on the father comment. And answering the 3 sub parts of this question correctly again will fetch you 5 solid marks. Okay, so in my opinion, I see this as an advantage for the ICSE students as compared to the CBSE students, because I grew up studying in a CBSE school, and many times in the CBSE boards, well, times have changed now, but in our times at least, you would be expected to write essays. You would just be given a 3 or 4 or a 5 mark question, in which the question would just be explain this or describe this, describe photosynthesis, and just you will be given 3 marks if answered correctly. So why I say that is a challenge is because if we are not given specific instructions on what to answer, the student would have to know what exact keywords would fetch him or her marks, right? The question is just describe photosynthesis. So I would need at least 5 or 6 keywords that will fetch me the full 3 marks. That's how it used to be in our times in CBSE. That's why I'm saying that for an ICSE student, this kind of a question would be much easier to answer, because you really know what is expected. Definition, very clearly it is this or that. You either know it or you don't know it. Experiment, of course, you would know it once you've done with your syllabus, and all of these, once you answer them, the 10 marks are completely yours, right? You don't have to think too much. The only task you would have is to read each sub question very clearly and give it your best shot. Write the answers in a crisp and legible manner, and that's about it. 10 marks are completely yours, okay? Now, this is a very, very important step. Develop a love for the subject. Well, right now in today's session, I can only talk to you about biology, and I am a biology teacher, but this does work well for any subject in the whole world, okay? But why I'm telling you this is because I know many children, and I myself have a lot of friends who did not like and who do not like biology as a subject, okay? But let me tell you, children, your 10th standard is a very, very crucial year, and this particular year you don't have much of a choice in selecting your core subjects, right? Core subjects always stay the same in your 10th standard, right? So at least bear with us, bear with me, bear with the subjects for the next few months, okay? You have no choice but to start with a positive mindset and develop a liking for every subject, right? After your 10th standard, you are definitely free to choose your choice of combinations of subjects, right? So at least until you finish your board exams, start with a positive mindset, develop a love for biology, right? And this is very, very important, and do not underestimate the importance of this particular step. And how do you develop that interest? Well, we will see in the days to come. As long as you stay with me in all my sessions, I will ensure that you understand biology in a fun and easier manner, okay? Now, break down the chapters into short chunks and then proceed to study. This again works very well for concept-heavy chapters like biology, because as such, if you look at one chapter, say for example, the excretory system, it's a huge chapter, right? And you have a lot of topics under that, like mechanism of urine formation, the structure of the human excretory system, and all the sub-concepts that fall under these topics, right? So, when you pick up the chapters to study, break it down into short chunks. That can be your choice. You decide how long your chunk has to be, okay? Chunk it down. It can be as small or as big as you want, how much ever you think you can finish at one go, and you can keep revising and reading again and again. Make sure the only thing to keep in mind is that it shouldn't be too less or too much for you to retain in your memory, right? That's the only thing. This is a very, very useful tip, especially for a subject like biology. Oh yes, and we don't want to end up becoming tired of studying an entire chapter like at one stretch like SpongeBob looks here, right? Make effective notes and constantly revise them. Again, I found this very interesting and beautiful. As a student and as a child, I was also a kind of student who enjoyed making these kinds of notes. It is your personal choice. Some children prefer to have separate books at home for each subject and then make notes in those. Some children prefer to just have sticky notes and paste it around your wall, in your study room, on your desk, in your textbooks, in your notebook, wherever. Some children just prefer to use highlighters, marker pens, and all of those things to make notes. Whatever works best for you. Okay, I found this interesting because for complex topics like the physiology topics, the human physiology topics, look at the way it's been made. The notes have been made. You have pictures here, you have labeled pictures here, and on the side of that, all the details crisp and short that you would need to know about that particular topic, right? So if you have a small book or a normal notebook, or you want to have like tiny strips of paper on which you want to make small notes in a colorful manner and carry it around and read through it whenever you want, wherever you go, I think that would really help, especially in recalling complex topics. Okay, in biology, constant revision and reading is very important. Okay, note making is a very important step because your biology textbook as such is exhaustive and it's got a lot of text, right? Unlike your physics and math textbooks, wherein you would have numericals to reduce the text. There would be minimal text and more of numericals, right? In math, but in biology, it's in fact 99% of text, right? In your textbooks. So just so that you don't get overwhelmed by the volume of that, my sincere suggestion to you is the first time you sit down to read a chapter, have a notebook by your side or a few rough papers by your side. Concentrate at your best, okay? Your focus should be at your best, and you have to take down effective notes in a crisp and neat manner in such a way that those notes will help yourself when you want to revise that chapter. So these will help in times, especially they will come in handy on the day of your exam in the morning when you just want to quickly glance through it, or on the eve of the exam when you want to revise all the 15 chapters of your textbook. It's not possible to sit and read through every single line on the eve of your exam, right? So notes as a revision tool come in very handy and extremely useful. Okay, now again, memorizing terminology, what I was telling you about. Now, many people, many children and many adults I know hate biology or have a disinterest in the subject biology, and they give the excuse that it's a subject that needs no logic. Math is not like that. Physics is not like that. Bio doesn't need any logic. Okay, so that's not how you should be looking at bio as a subject. I'm telling you, without science and math, without science, definitely this world wouldn't exist at all. And physics, chemistry, bio, all of these are important. And bio, why is it important? It helps you understand yourself, your bodily processes, your surroundings, animals around you, what you eat, everything related to your life and everything around us, right? So as such, biology is significant in this world. But another reason students don't like the subject is because they say that there are too many terms to memorize, right? So I don't see another option. You just have to remember the terms. I agree, there are a lot of terms in biology, but the best thing that we can do would be to find some tricks on how you can memorize and recall those terms, right, and understand those definitions. So for instance, in biology, if you look at it, most terms would have great meaning, would be much easier to remember if you broke them down into parts and understood the meaning of the root word. Okay, say for instance, the word heterozygous and homozygous in genetics, right? The prefix hetero in this word has to indicate that it is different or not similar, right? And homozygous, homo would indicate that it's similar or uniform, right? So that way you can be sure, if you have a confusion between these two terms, what is heterozygous and what is homozygous, right? You will be able to identify either this or this as homo and heterozygous respectively. So since heterozygous, hetero is different, the meaning of it would ultimately be that the two alleles of a genotype are different, like you see here, capital T and small t. Capital T, small t together are called heterozygous, are described as heterozygous condition. And homozygous, because homo means similar, you have two similar alleles, or the two alleles of the genotype are the same, capital T, or a small t, or whatever allele or gene it may be. Okay, this is just to give you an example. So understand the root of the term. Another example that I can think of is the term photosynthesis, right? Break it down into photo and synthesis. Photo has to indicate that it's got something to do with light, and synthesis will indicate that it's preparation or assembly of a few ingredients, right? If you just understand terms in this manner, you would definitely be able to recall the meaning of those terms. There are a lot of terms in biology, and most of them can be broken down into these root words. Okay, try it out. It's a very, very useful tip. Now, another tip, definitely you would have heard of these before. Creating mnemonics. They work very well for biology, and they work well especially when you have to remember something in a sequence, right? For instance, the example that I could think of for telling you today are the stages of mitosis. As the stages of mitosis or meiosis, you need to remember them in an order, right? How you remember the processes, that's a completely different aspect. You will have to just visualize and about how it happens and just keep recalling that. But to start with, to remember the names in a sequence of the process, you should be able to have good memory, right? So the simplest trick I could think of: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, right? So that is the order in which the stages in mitosis occur. So I picked up the first letters of each of these words. That's how a mnemonic is made. And I have made a sentence, right? So I have made a sentence. I prefer Malayalam and Tamil. Okay, no offense meant here. Well, this is just my personal choice because I grew up in South India, and honestly speaking, these two are my most preferred Indian languages. Definitely, you can create your own mnemonics, whatever will help you remember best, whatever will help you remember it most clearly, right? As much as possible, don't have any inter words like the or anything like that, because ultimately that will confuse you when you try to recall the actual order of the words, right? So for this, this is just an example for all concepts that you have to know in a sequence or any other set of terms that you have to remember. Mnemonics can work wonders, and everything, memorizing everything will be much, much easier. Okay? And yes, making charts. Make charts and paste it somewhere that you're likely to look at always. So this is just an example of mitosis and meiosis that I have put here. I mean, I agree that these are honestly not the best way of creating charts for these concepts, but just to give you an idea, right? If you have created charts for concepts like these and pasted it somewhere around in your study room or wherever, in your bedroom or wherever you are likely to look at most of the time, it will subconsciously get imprinted in your minds, even if you're not making a conscious effort to study it. Right? So this is a very useful tip, and here the examples that I have given are mitosis, meiosis, endocrine glands. Yes, for endocrine glands, the chapter about endocrine glands, you have about 4 or 5 major endocrine glands to study, right? So you could make a table, right? You could have the first column with the name of the gland. The second column could be the name of the hormone or hormones that the gland secretes, and the third column could be the action of the hormone on the target organs, right? So the gland, the hormone, and the action or the mode of action of the hormone, right? And create a table like this, paste it somewhere around, and definitely keep looking at it, even if not with a conscious effort, and you will be able to retain those in a much easier and a much faster manner that you ever think. Practice diagrams. I do agree that in ICSE, it's not a very common thing to be asked to draw the diagrams commonly for your exams, but there are times when you could be asked to draw a diagram also, right? In CBSE, it's usually a very important thing that you should learn and practice how to draw diagrams, draw a well-labeled diagram, right? Those things are important in CBSE, but for ICSE, although as such drawing the diagram may be a little less important, diagram based questions in biology are certainly very, very important, right? Especially in section 2. If you look at the past year's papers, you would know that a lot of questions are diagram based. So what do I mean by that? A diagram, a label diagram, or just a diagram may be given to you in your question paper, and a set of questions will be asked based on the diagram, right? Identify this, or identify ABC labels, or something like that, or something related to that, right? So it is very important to practice diagrams. I don't want you to commit mistakes that our generation has done as students. So let me just share a bit of a very small example of blunders that I did in this particular thing. There have been times when, as a student, not always I would sit and practice diagrams, right? I would just look at the textbook, I would read the concept. Once I have understood it, I will be like, oh wow, this image is already a photo in my brain's computer, so I am definitely not going to forget this image. Why do I need to practice? Tomorrow, if it's asked in the exam, I could just reproduce it as such. Not a very difficult thing. But this has always had very, very bad results during my exam, okay? Because when I try to recall, it'll be like, I don't see the picture clearly. I just see something blur and vague, okay? So that is when this happened to me twice or thrice, that is when I really, really understood the importance of drawing and practicing diagrams. So in biology, at least, it's a very, very important thing. Do keep it in mind. Practice them neatly. Even if you are not an artist, even if you don't have artistic skills, it's completely all right. Not everyone can draw like an artist, right? Like giving shades and things like that. That doesn't matter. Scientifically, what you draw and what you label has to be completely correct, okay? And just in case you're asked to draw and label a diagram, make sure that you draw it very neatly with a sharp pencil, and make sure that you label it, like all your labels should be at the same level, and your labeling should preferably be in block letters, so that the examiner or the teacher evaluating your paper can read what you have written, right? And make it a point to write the heading or the name for each diagram just below it and underline it. All right? Yes, this is again a very general tip for studies, for any subject. Study for 20 to 30 minutes at a stretch and take 5 minutes breaks in between. If you practice this, you can be like this happy child, not feeling overwhelmed by the volume of the enormous amount of study material that you have to go through, because this has been scientifically proven. And how does this work? You divide your time to perhaps 25 minutes of studies at a stretch, and then you take a 5 minutes break, again the next 25 minutes, again a 5 minutes break, and so on until about 2 hours. And when you're close to 2 hours, you can take a slightly longer break of about 15 minutes, right? And when you come back after that break, it would be a good idea to sit and revise whatever you did in those 2 hours, okay? This is a very, very useful technique, mainly because you are chunking down your time, and your focus automatically is not on finishing an entire chapter or an entire subject. Your focus is only on finishing the topic that you have chosen to cover in those 25 minutes, right? Completely focus during those 25 minutes. That is the key to successfully practicing this particular technique. It's called the Pomodoro technique. Some of you must have heard it, okay? So make sure you are completely focused during those 20-25 minutes. And like I told you, you would anyway be chunking down your chapter into smaller parts. And if you could design your chunks in such a manner that one chunk of your chapter corresponds to one of these 25 minutes of your time chunk, that would be absolutely great. It would make logical sense to you, and it would help you recall things in a much more logical and orderly manner when you sit down to revise it, right? Solving past papers. For every subject, this is very, very important. In another session, I have told you the importance of this particular step. This is a step that is completely irreplaceable. You just cannot go to a major exam, especially 10th and 12th board exams or a competitive exam for that matter. You just cannot afford to appear for it without solving past year's papers. You might have done a great job of memorizing everything in your textbook. You might have done a great job of understanding all the concepts thoroughly. But ultimately, what boosts your confidence is only looking at past year's papers, because that gives you the actual feel of the exam, what kinds of questions are asked, and how your thought process has to be during your exam. And I don't mean you just sit and glance through the past year's papers. You literally have to be loyal and sincere to yourself. Keep a timer in your room. Cut out all distractions. Tell everyone not to distract you for the next 2 hours and 15 minutes. Imagine that you're in the exam hall and sit and solve each paper just like you would do in your actual final exam, right? The more number of papers you solve of the previous year's patterns, the previous year's papers, the more confident you will be. How much ever, whatever level of a student you are, this is certainly a very, very, very useful technique in helping you come out with flying colors in any major exam, right? And once you've learnt a concept, teach it to a friend or look into a mirror and teach yourself in the clearest possible way. Now, this is a tip that I have developed and enjoyed as a child, as a teacher, as a child, as a student. I really used to enjoy this, okay? Sometimes I think when I was much younger, probably in like 6th, 7th and all that, I would like read through something in my textbook and explain it either to my mom or my sister. Like I would assume that I'm the teacher and just explain it to them. When I grew up a little more, I was a little more comfortable being in like my own company while I was studying, right? So at that point of time, what I did was I had a small whiteboard in my study room and I had a marker, and once I had completed studying a concept, I would just close the door of my room and I would just be alone. I would just pretend that I'm teaching a class and I would use that board to teach that particular concept in the clearest possible manner. Okay, because scientifically, again, this has been proven to be very, very useful in terms of retaining something in your memory. Well, I don't underestimate the importance of reading something over and over again. Reading something 10 times, 20 times, 30 times is certainly a useful thing. And like I said, reading through your own notes is also a very effective way. But after you do all of that, if you could just find some time to finish up your studies of that particular concept or topic by pretending to be a teacher. Once you teach someone, it is retained in the best possible manner in your memory, especially if it's a process, if it's a long process like mitosis, meiosis, or one of the human physiology processes. It will definitely help you, because you know where you're getting stuck in the middle. Your thought process, your brain is visualizing what you have read through, and you know in case you get stuck somewhere, you can always go back to your book, read through it once again and try it all over again. And if you can say it out loud while you teach, that's the best thing, because I personally feel that the more you hear something in your own voice, the more it gets imprinted in a better way in your brain. Right? And again, like I told you in my previous session, during your exam, there are certain very, very important things that you need to consider. General things, of course, like going with a calm mind. You should have had enough of rest, a good night's sleep, so that your brain gets enough oxygen to recall things better in your exam hall. You should have a healthy breakfast. You shouldn't go without eating anything. Drink enough water. All of those things apart, and being at the exam center on time, all of those things apart, these are the things that you will certainly have to follow during your exam, right? Make use of the reading time, the 15 minutes given to you, especially in biology when there is a lot of text. You must read through what exactly has been asked and just picturize quickly what exactly you are expected to write, okay? Decide the order to attempt the paper. So what I mean is, sometimes in biology, your section 2 answers can require a little more thinking and a little more time as compared to section 1, right? So perhaps for some of you, when you sit down to start your exam, it may be a little better useful for you if you could start writing with section 2, because you feel that your brain is thinking in the best possible manner. When you start the exam, your brain is fresh, so you want some time and you want to think of it aram se, take your time and finish off section 2 and then go on to section 1. But the only thing, if you are deciding your own order of attempting the paper, the main thing to keep in mind is be sure of writing the question numbers very, very clearly. If you're attempting section 2 first, write the heading section 2 on top, write the question numbers very clearly, and only then when you start section 1, again write the heading section 1 and put the question numbers correctly, because the examiner can get confused if you ultimately by mistake end up having the same question number for 2 different answers, and then that could have a negative impact on your results, right? So I have written that here. Write the question numbers very clearly. It's a very important step. I myself have seen a lot of students who even forget to write the question number altogether. It's like taken for granted. The teacher has to mix and match. Look at the question paper and look at my answer paper, mix and match what question I have answered here. That's not the case, especially for your board exam. The examiner has a huge number of papers to correct. So in whatever way you can help the examiner, that will actually have a positive impact on your results. The first impression of your paper, the way you have presented, can have a great impact on how much you score, right? Keep track of time, of course. You must always wear a watch to your exam hall, whether or not there is a clock in the exam hall, right? Remember that. Keep your calm. Yes, it's always useful to practice some simple breathing techniques. If you do practice yoga, that's amazing. That's absolutely great. If you don't, you can just start by practicing some pranayama techniques. Okay, they can really help your brain function better. I'm not saying do this only on the day of your exam. The more you do over a period of time, the results will be much more long lasting. Okay, so start practicing breathing techniques at least for 5 to 10 minutes. If you can do it for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, I think that will have a great impact on how your brain functions, right? So keep your calm, stay calm. Nothing bad is going to happen during your exam. If you have done your best during your preparation, you will certainly give it your best shot during your exam, right? Make sure you read the question well before you answer it. I've told you this already. Write neatly and legibly, of course. Write the question numbers clearly and write crisp answers. Keywords are especially important for theory heavy chapters like biology, because you may end up and you may get carried away and end up writing like 1 page of an answer when what is expected is only a 1 mark answer, a 1 line answer, right? You must know what exactly to write, which, don't worry, which will come to you with practice. And this is where your preparation in the next 3-4 months is going to play a great role. Okay, make sure you stay tuned. I will be giving you specific tips and tricks on how to tackle concepts in each chapter in your biology subject, and you will get these tips and tricks from your respective other subject teachers also, right? So let's hope to have many more interesting sessions. And yes, I always believe that where there is a will, there is definitely a way. Whether or not you like biology, it doesn't matter. But if you are really willing to score well, if you really want to score 100% in your biology board exam, it's not late yet. Okay, there is always a way. You will find a way out, and we here at Vedantu are always here to guide you and help you at every stage of your preparation. Don't forget to download Vedantu's learning app, wherein we have a lot of amazing features. Join our Telegram group so that you can chat with our teachers directly regarding any of your academic concerns, any specific doubts that you want answered, and we have all of these amazing features out there. And if you like this particular video, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you have found it useful, do not forget to share it with your near and dear ones, with your friends, whatever board they may be in. If you think this was useful for studying biology as such for any student, do share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Vedantu 9 and 10. I am always happy to help you, so connect with me either at my email ID ambika.gopalakrishnan@vedantu.com, or if you have any specific comments, do remember to post them in the comment section below. Right? So I'll see you again with a lot more interesting topics. Until then, happy studying and bye-bye.